Well, we sat and tried to adjust these CVF hinges for a couple hours. We were not able to get the backside of the hood to lay down, and it turns out that the backside of the hinge was actually hitting the area of the cowl right up there where I just cut it out. So I really like the hinges. We like how they move, like how they look. So it was worth taking a few extra minutes, actually about an hour or so, and took a hole saw, cut a nice shape out of here, ground it down above even with where the DSE plate is going to go, and did that on both sides. And then I made 2 little trays that'll slide into that area. I'll set them in, mark the side with a marker, grind them down flush, and then we'll go ahead and weld those in. Got these little indents all welded in. This one I've got the hinge back on. It gives me an extra 3/8 to 1/2 of an inch for the arms of those hinges to go down in, and I can get a little better adjustment, and it'll look nice once it's all finished up and body worked and everything. So let's try to put this hood on once again. The latch is blasted, we got the bumpers in, everything is adjusted, the hood shuts beautifully. We've got great gaps all the way around. Sitting down nice and flush with the fenders. So we're very happy, and we got a little bit of adjustment done on the grill, so that lines up beautifully with the hood now too.
I win!
We're going to see how well this radiator fits that we picked up from Justin over at Be Cool. So let's get the hood opened up and see if she slides in.
Ooh,
Radiator is in, mounts up perfectly, got the cap on. You just got it loosely put in. I still have to go grab the vintage air setup to get the condenser for the AC, and we need to call them because we are missing a fan. The fans showed up.
I win!
So we have those mounted in place. Radiator is mounted in place. Dryer is mounted in place. We started routing a couple lines we had fittings for. The rest of them are going to run through bulkheads in there. Those fittings should be here in a day or two. So I did manage to at least get it laid out enough that I could order all the fittings and get the correct stuff so we can get this all hooked up to the box under the dash. We have to do a little bit of cutting underneath the dash area, getting rid of a few things under there for the hoses to run through to the new box location. And we are already running out of space. I still need to mount the 3 reservoirs for the brakes and clutch, and the electrical box for all the fuses for the fuel pump and all of that has to mount under here yet. So first thing I'm going to do is get the Stainless Works headers out of the box. Those came from Church Boys, guaranteed to fit in our location with the equipment we're using and the DSE and the LS and all of that. So I'm gonna get the headers mounted first and then break out some cardboard and start working on this upper panel that's going to cover up the radiator and give us a place to mount all of our boosters, overflow, all of that. So here we go. This will be much easier to install once we have it painted and put together, because it looks like I'll be able to put these headers right on the motor when I go to drop it in the next time. So that won't be a huge issue. But right now, my dipstick is definitely an issue. So I'm gonna grab what looks like 14 or something there. Get this dipstick pulled up out of the way. All right, dipstick out of the way. So as I mentioned earlier, I said these will be a lot easier to install the second time, and they will be, but I've installed a lot of headers onto a lot of different vehicles, including Mopars with torsion bars, suspension, and had all kinds of nightmares having to lift motors up out of the motor mounts to get space, take motors out to put headers on and put them back in, halfway install headers to install the motor to put them in. This was none of that. It was literally pull the boots. It took me 2 seconds to pull that dipstick out and plop it back in. The only issue I found so far is the bolt that holds the dipstick on the original LS3. The bolt's a little too big, so we'll have to put a little Allen head or something on there to actually secure the dipstick. And come around to this side, same thing. Actually a hair easier. I didn't even have to pull the steering arm out. I've got all kinds of clearance around the steering, all kinds of clearance around the frame, plenty of room around the spark plug boots. These things are freaking fantastic. All right, I had this all completely figured out, at least for these three. I was like, yeah, look at that. That's a great spot for them. I'm already building that little bracket in there. I drilled 3 holes down underneath for the hose connections to go through, and those caps stick right through the cover, which you might not be able to picture yet, but you'll see once we get the cardboard down how that cover is going to come across. Anyway, that would have been absolutely perfect place to put it. But at the last second, I started to realize that I don't think that that is going to be above the master cylinders in the dash. So that means none of this fluid will actually feed to the master cylinders, which means the brakes will not work. So my plan now is I am going to eliminate this entire hump right here. This will go away. I'm going to cut this whole piece out and turn that shelf area right there above where my firewall work ended into a flat piece. And then right there in between those marks, we are going to drop these canisters down, and there will be 3 caps sitting right there. So you won't see any of that. You'll just see the 3 caps sitting there. So now you're wondering, well, that's great, but now it's going to leak inside the car, right? Well, first off, we're going to drill really nice holes in that flat panel there, and we will seal the top of these jars, reservoirs, whatever you want to call them, right to those holes. So that right there should be enough to keep the water out. But just in case that isn't, you come around the back side here, this whole back side of the hood here has a nice 3/4 inch flat flange, which would meet up to this flange right here on the cowl. And there's a perfect like 1/4 inch gap all the way along that when the hood's shut. So why not put a rubber seal on the back of the hood, so when the hood shuts, it seals that whole thing up. And there's already a little bit of a slope coming from the center to the right and left from there, so no water is actually going to sit on that gasket. It'll all run passenger side, driver side, and then it'll run down in that crack down through like it would have originally. So that is the plan. Unfortunately, it means taking the hood off, and I really want the hood on right now to build this panel. So we are going to set these little reservoirs aside for the moment and start building this panel. So the good thing with all of that means that all I need to fit in these areas on each side of the radiator is the electrical box and an overflow tank. So that makes life millions and millions and millions of times easier, but it means a lot more work up there. But got to do what you got to do. I really don't want anything on this firewall, so that's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna run this cover all the way over. It's gonna run right into the front of the grill. We'll have one little opening in here for the hood latch to drop into. But other than that, it's just gonna be this clean, gorgeous sea of satin red with this jewel sitting in the middle of it. The only mechanics you're really gonna be able to see, possibly a wire or two here or there, the steering shaft, which we did a really nice job. I mean, it fits nice and tight, clean in there. So there's no problem seeing that. It's gonna look nice. And then there might be a couple of hoses that you'll peek out and see a little corner of here or there going up under the covers. But, you know, at first glance, this thing's gonna look like it shouldn't even run. So here's the deal. This is our main piece of the cover. We're gonna build everything off of this. Originally, these two end flanges right here slid up underneath the fender and we were gonna bolt through there, but I quickly realized once the two pieces were welded together and became one, and these other pieces are welded on, that the only way we would be able to take that cover off is to actually remove the fenders, which is just not gonna work. This was my first thought, obviously, was we would mount it on top because I was going to do some nice little covers that went over all of these bolts. But the hood fitment is so tight along that lip there that we cannot add any height to that flange at all. So I can put a nice washer cap, Allen bolt, whatever in there, but the rest of that flange will just have to be cleaned up and we'll have to just make it look frickin' pretty. First thing I'm gonna do is get that handled, get that attached through the inner fender how I want it, figure out how I'm gonna get this centerpiece stamped down for the radiator cap, and get this reattached, make sure the hood shuts, and then we can continue on with the rest of the pieces that need to weld to it. I've got this edge attached up underneath. You can see the two little lines right there. That actually has a hole. That piece bends down at a 90, and there are two screws that attach through the inner fender. Same thing on this side. Comes around, two screws coming from the inner fender in. So that solved my issue with the height with the hood on each side there. Then this front needs to be down very tight in the front. Otherwise, the top part of the hood behind the latch up there has issues. So I've got that clamped down where it needs to be. When I do the two front pieces up here, we'll make sure that's nice and straight. If you look at it, it's got a little bit of a swoop to it right now, but that'll be nice and straightened out and come in with the filler panels, go down to the grill. And then instead of dimple dyeing and dropping this in, because it was actually going to have to sit at a bit of an angle right here, I bent this piece up. This will drop down, and then I'm going to make a piece of sheet metal to fill in around this edge. You can see through. So that'll all get welded up and be together. Then we'll have a nice base here for the radiator cap to sit on. And then I'll start building these front pieces while it's clamped down in place, so we know it'll stay in position once those pieces are screwed in. So other than the 2 holes for the hood adjustment bumpers to come through, the front radiator shroud is complete. As I said, I decided we weren't going to go any further back with it. I know originally we had talked about tying this into the inner fenders, but everything I did past this point of the cover just made it look bulky and horrible. So leaving it alone just how it is. Once this is all painted satin right, it is going to look beautiful. So we have taken the hood off. Now that I know that the hood opens and shuts with this cover on and we're all good there, have plenty of clearance, I'm going to get these hinges out of the way. And then this center strip here on top of the cowl is going to be cut out. I am replacing it with a flat piece of sheet metal. And then right here in between these 2 lines is where the reservoir fill caps are going to go for the front rear brakes and the clutch. So I know there'll be plenty of room for them when the hood's shut, because that bump is already there and the caps are not as tall as that section there is. So get this chopped out of there, start making pieces, get it bent up, and then you're Alright, so that section has been cut out. There was just one little bracket sitting here that we needed to get rid of, so no worries there. We'll do a little cleanup in here. I'm going to leave this front edge on the other side of the tape here. It's doubled up. There's, good steel under there. There's a huge stamp plate, probably like 14 gauge, that bends through there. So I'm going to leave all that alone, leave the structure there. This that we cut off is pretty much just the cover, the cosmetic part, so we're going to get that put in, replaced. And then I need to figure out how much of this inner gutter here I'm actually going to want to cut out so that I can drop these canisters down in place. Okay, this is all trimmed up, welded in place. Added an extra bracket there to carry the wiper motor bracketry, and then added some strength in this corner here to replace what we took out. We cleaned up this front edge here. I made a piece of plate and threaded the holes for the bracket for all these little containers, reservoirs to attach to. So I am going to go ahead, get that bracket welded into place. I win.